Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the XLerate Program and the second installment of the series that's called The Structure of Torah in Historical Context. Even though this program is not officially launching until December, we are dropping, some sneak previews, particularly some getting a head start on this particular segment of the program. The structure of Torah in historical context. And tonight we are going to discuss the fundamental question of why our Torah is in two parts: a written Torah and an oral Torah, the Torah Shebechsav, which is the Tanakh, which we believe is 24 books. And depending on how you divide what the thing that they call the Old Testament, we say it's the one and only. And then there's the much more voluminous, exponentially more voluminous Torah Shebaal Peh that's still expanding, oral law. Why is it that way? Why is it, divided between a written law and an oral law? What is the function of the written law? What is the function of the oral law? And what is the difference within the written law between Torah versus Nevi'im versus Kesuvim? Right, and we're going to try in a nutshell to give an orientation to all this. And as we've said, perhaps in the past, and if we didn't accentuate it enough, well, let's do it now. Let's make very clear that in this series, the XLerate series, we are Rambam-centric. We go with the Rambam, because that's what I and my mentors were most anchored to. My Rebbe of Yaakov Weinberg and also my other Rebbe, Moshe Shapira, were very Rambam-centric in their learning. But for our person, because the Rambam was a man of systems. He was system-oriented in everything that he wrote. And which is what we are trying to impart in our XLerate series. He and the Ramchal were two outstanding Jewish leaders. There were people who were their intellectual equals or even greater than them intellectually, really. The Rivash, who was a Sephardi, says that he accepts the tradition that Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri were bigger than the Rambam. But just because, let's say, they were intellectually superior, that doesn't mean in their writing that they were systematic. We have Rabbeinu Tam, as he addresses issues in the Talmud, every issue separately. The Ram wrote systematic works. So the Rambam is extremely helpful for what this series is all about. We're going to be very Rambam-centric. Some things that we say, I know the Ramban would take issue with, but... the Rambam is definitely has wide shoulders that we can rely on. And Nakoid Hai Kala Biadecha, take this principle with you that the XLerate series is, if we don't specify, assume it is the position of the Rambam, unless otherwise specified. The Rambam and the Ramchal, both two very systematic thinkers. And that's why the Ramchal had a special affinity for the writings of the Rambam. It was like a precursor for what the Ramchal does. Okay. So now, without further ado, all right, we have to understand why we have two parts to our Torah, the written and the oral, and even the written breaks up into three categories: Torah, Nevi'im, and Kesuvim, which the Gemara says that it's parallel to how the Jewish people break up the Kohanim, Nevi'im, Yisraelim. There's the threeness, and we'll discuss that hopefully in a matter that. Captured in a few brief words. You have to forgive me that I'm distracted. I'm looking at my toolbar at the bottom of my screen. It's been going crazy. Weird stuff's going on. I'm telling you. The cosmic energies are nuts these days. I'm recording this on Tuesday, the 15th of November, and we released a video earlier today about current events, and I'm probably going to release another one tonight after we hear the announcement of our 45th president, which is against the backdrop of Russian missiles having fallen in Poland today. Crazy times, and later tonight we will drop a video about that after I hear what the president has to say. All right, but getting back to our topic. All right, so we have the written Torah, we have the oral Torah. So I would like to open the discussion, point out two things, right? First of all, what everyone, I assume, knows, and if not, listen carefully. There is one common thread to everything that makes it into the written Torah, right? There is one common thread. It was either full-blown prophecy or divinely inspired, which puts Torah and Nevi'im in one category. And the last category of Kesuvim, which is like Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, Koheles, Megillas Esther, right? Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, right? Those books are divinely inspired, as it were. That even though it's not full-blown prophecy, but we believe it was written with spiritual augmentation. Sometimes that's obvious, like in the book of Daniel, he mentions having visions. And so it's a lot less obvious, like in the book of Esther or any of Shlomo Melch's books, which are all Kesuvim. You wouldn't be able to tell, except that we are guided by the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, who decided what to canonize, what makes it into the canon. That's part of the Tanakh. So the Kesuvim is written Baruch HaKor. So there's either full-blown prophecy or divinely inspired, right? As opposed to Torah Shebaal Peh, which is pure intellect. Okay, so it's pure thought, and therefore, even if your intelligence was divinely augmented, but it comes in a way of seichel. It's thinking. It's not in a form of prophecy. All right, and we're going to define that more in a second. But I want to get to the issue I'm trying to posit, and that is, so prophecy is what makes it into Tanakh, right? Gemara says we had at least 1,200,000 prophets. So why is Tanakh so small? It should be like 1,200,000 books to it, right? That's number one. All right, and we're going to get to that and what the Gemara says regarding that. But B, right, is a more fundamental question, especially for this class, as we are going in historical context, right? We had prophets before Moshe Rabbeinu. Adam himself was a prophet, right? And Noach was a prophet. Shem and Aver had prophecy, right? Avram Avinu had prophecy, right? But they don't have books. They have prophecy, and their prophecies are all incorporated in Moshe Rabbeinu's book, in Moshe's book, right? We have the book of Moshe, right? Now, Moshe triggers a process that from him onwards, there are books of prophecy. After him, there's Yoshua and all the other books of Nevi'im. So what changed? There were prophets that walked the earth, that received prophecies, and and whatever prophecies they received either get incorporated in Moshe Rabbeinu's book, but it's all the prophecy of Moshe. Moshe is prophesizing that they had earlier in history received these prophecies, but it's all Moshe's prophecies, prophesizing that they received those prophecies earlier on. Right? Their prophecies that they had in their day don't become part of Tanakh. It's only from Moshe Rabbeinu that this shift happens. Right? So before we address that issue, we're going to go to the opposite side of history. Moshe is the first of Tanakh. It starts with the Chumash. His book kicks off Tanakh. And at the end of the era of Tanakh, the end of the era of Nevi'im, very close to when the Tanakh was sealed by the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, is the book of Esther. Right, it's part of the Kesuvim. Although we're going to show that what makes it Kesuvim is not the era, but rather the level of prophecy that was written with. Right, as we're going to explain. But bottom line is the book of Esther was written at the end of the Babylonian exile, very close, about the time of Chagi, Schar, and Malachi, the end of the Nevi'im, and shortly after that, Anshe Knesset Hagdola just sealed it. They sealed the Tanakh. Right? So now Esther, Chazal tell us, had to fight with the Anshe Knesset Gdola that her book should become part of Tanakh. Kisvuni L'Dairos, it's a Gemara Megillah Daf Zayin, and Megillah 7. Her dialogue or negotiations or argument with the Sanhedrin that it should become part of Tanakh, her book. What's the big deal? So it won't be part of Tanakh. It'll only be part of the Torah Shebaal Peh, like the story of Hanukkah. Hanukkah doesn't have a scroll. The Megillas Hanukkah or Megillas Chashmonaim or the Book of Maccabees that all talk about the story of Hanukkah, they're not part of the Tanakh, right? They do not have the status of Kisvei HaKodesh, though it belongs to the oral law. So let Purim be the same. What was she fighting for? That she wants it to be a book. Okay, so our two questions actually are answered by the same answer. All right, think about this for a second. What's prophecy? What you see. What's what now? It's visions. Now, of course, if you don't see it with your flesh eye, but you see it in your mind's eye. It's things that the prophets saw. It's an experience. He experiences it, an experience that's parallel that we would best describe as he saw it, even though it's not optical, but he saw it, he perceived it, the same way the eyes see something. All right. Now, as opposed to Torah Shebaal Peh, which is communicated by hearing, right? So now, these are the two types of information that we have, right? There are things that we know because we saw it, and there are things that we know because we heard about it. What's the difference between what we see and what we hear? The stuff that we learn because we've seen it, the stuff that we learn because we've heard about it. Right? Well, the stuff that we see is fact. As I say, seeing is believing. It's like solid data, right? And if you saw it for yourself, it's true, right? So seeing it makes it objective, tangible. Now also, where we have this in halacha is taking testimony. In halacha, we don't care about hearsay. Witnesses come and say, we heard, get out. What did you see? And we make sure to cross-examine them very carefully. We want to know what you saw. We don't want your interpretation of what you saw. That's how we often trip up witnesses, right? We want them to, just say what they saw, and what they are testifying to should be evident from what they saw, not how they interpret the data. And that's called, but that's on the one hand, that's what's called testimony. It's called the most objective form of information, not seeing. But, on the other hand, right, seeing has no depth to it. Like you could see something, but you can't explain it. But it's true because you saw it. And often the explanation is concocted in the head. You figure out, this happened because. The mind explains. So the eyes see what's demonstrated. There's demonstration versus explanation. Right? And it's the difference between eyes and ears. Eyes are to see what's demonstrably true, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Observably true. Right? And these are the facts that are undeniable, right? And have to be dealt with. And the question is how you explain it. Now, everyone has their theory, and now I will relate my theory of how I explain it. I'll put it in words, and you'll absorb my explanation through your ears. So the ears hear like explanation, ideas, right? But these ideas may not be the truth. They're ideas, right? The eyes see facts, but the facts don't have the depth to them. And that's why the human experience needs eyes and you need ears. Now with this, the Maharal, and others have, the Maharal, and also I heard tremendous shiurim on this from my Rebbe, Moshe Shapira, right? In halacha, the blind man is called like dead, but he's considered to be mentally competent. The deaf man, we're talking about someone who was deaf his whole life. He never heard in his life. And in their days, before the big breakthroughs that we have in the education of the deaf, and anyone who, God forbid, has a deaf child, never heard, but thank God is enjoying the breakthroughs that we have in educating the deaf, knows that it's a complicated sugya. It's a question to ask your local Orthodox rabbi, right? But in the olden days, they did not have a way to educate the deaf. But it's interesting, the deaf is considered to be 100% alive. The blind man's called metaphorically dead. Choshev kames. Like a poor man is called metaphorically dead because the poor man has no influence because no one wants to listen to the poor guy. Man, do I know that, right? And similarly, a person who's blind is like dead, which we'll explain in a second why that should be. The poor man, we understand. The leper, who's also considered to be the Mitzorah, also considered to be like dead in his lifetime. We understand because he has to live in isolation. So he's cut off. So it's like he's dead, like he's removed. He's removed from life. Why is the blind man called removed from life? But the blind man, even though it's called kames, he's 100% mentally competent. He's not a shaita, right? His mitzvahs are mitzvahs, and his acquisitions are legally binding, have legal standing. No, he's called a bardas. He's considered to be an intelligent person, not an imbecile. He's a bardas. He's just choshev kames for reasons I'll explain. But the cheresh is called, he has the same thing as a shaitan, like a minor and an imbecile. It goes back then when we couldn't educate the deaf. Like I said, in this day and age, ask your local Orthodox rabbi if there's a question regarding a family member. And it's talking about, again, someone who never heard, never benefited, he never heard in his life. Okay? So he's called like a shaita, like an imbecile. He's considered to be, he's 100% alive, but mentally incompetent. Okay? Why? So the Maharal explains, and I'm explaining this with the embellishments that I got at it from my Rebbe Moshe Shapir, Zechat Tzai V'Karsh Levracha, right? Reality is, reality, and to be real with reality is you got to see it. You ever think about this? Why is the first thing God created light? The Maharal points out in connection to that. First thing God creates is light. There was nothing to see, right? That means, in the words of how my Rebbe explained the Maharal, it sets the tone for how we define reality. What reality is? What God wanted to show you, what God wanted to reveal to you. But really to reveal to you, not you'll hear about it and it's theoretical. Reveal to you. It's fact. Reveal to you. And that's why light was the first thing created. It sets the tone for what reality is. Revelation. And therefore, the blind man who never can't see, lo aleinu, right? He's cut off from reality because the definition of reality is revelation, right? Reality, and so shoresh, right? The word real. To be real with reality, you got to see it, right? And that's why in the future, a lot of things Hashem, you will see. That we're not just going to hear about it; we're going to see it and be real with it. And the blind man, unfortunately, is, he only hears about reality. So for him, it's all a dream. It's all a story. He doesn't observe it. He's not experiencing reality in a way that he's real with reality. Yeah? Right? But on the other hand, the deaf person, he sees it, but he doesn't understand it because all explanation is oral. So he sees stuff, but he doesn't understand it. You want to explain it to him, but explanation is, communicated by sound. You put the ideas, the explanation in words, and he doesn't have ears to absorb the explanation. And sadly, there's certain things that are invisible. You can't see right and wrong in a microscope or a telescope. Right? These are ideas, the right and the wrong. I mean, in the future, even morality will be visible. Right? But let's leave that for now. In the future, there'll be tremendous revelations. There are a lot of things that right now we know intellectually in front of Torah Shabbat Peh will be actually revealed. Right? It'll be visible. Amazing. Right? That's called that the creation has been refined, that a lot that we can't see, it's off our visible scale, which are a lot of issues of morality and ethics. They will be visible in the future. They were visible by Sinai. It says, they saw the sound. Rash says, they saw sound, meaning the things that to us, we only know because we hear about it, right? We figure it out. was actually visible at the time of Matan Torah, and we lost that level, right? But so going back to our situation today, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, a lot of issues of etiquette, a lot of things that people learn, which you can only learn about if you can hear, because these things are invisible. So they have to. So the mind that captures these ideas puts these ideas in words, and you hear them, and you can't, right? He can't hear it, can't absorb the explanation, which includes issues of right and wrong and proper etiquette and common sense. All these things are not physically visible. You're taught it from your parents, from your teachers, and he doesn't have the ability to absorb those invisible teachings that are just ideas and words, and he can't receive it. So he can't be held responsible for his actions because he can't be taught right from wrong, and many other things that are just not visible facts. They're ideas. Okay, so now our Holy Torah also breaks up, our Holy Torah parallels the human experience, right? We have eyes, we have ears, and Torah wants to address the whole human being, right? And Torah wants to, on one hand, convey itself as being visible, incontrovertible fact, right? And that's why it becomes a book, just like the prophet saw it. So we absorb the written law with our eyes, just like the prophet perceived these things and knows it's real. The miracle of it becoming a book also has the same amazing effect. Have you ever wondered? And I worked at Aish Torah, I worked in the Kiruv field, and I was amazed that people, when we argue with people, try to get them to take on Judaism, they're a lot quicker to accept the Bible, the Torah Shebechsav, before they accept the Mishnah and the Talmud. And there's no logic to that dichotomy, because if I'm relying on our forefathers to say this is God's book, it's the same people you're relying on to say this is God's book, the same people that say, and this is the old tradition that came with it. If I'm trusting my forefathers that this is the book that Moshe wrote, right, I should trust them also. This is the oral explanations that came with it, right? What's the explanation for this phenomenon that I think is sweeping, even by the Gentiles? I think they're more inclined to accept the Bible, which they do, right? And they don't accept the Talmud. Also, it's kind of hidden from them. It's only revealed amongst ourselves. It's one example, one of the advantages of being an oral law. But now you might say, no, it's not hidden anymore because it was redacted. It was put in writing. It was written down. But still, it still innately remains the oral law, despite the fact that it was put in writing, so we shouldn't forget it. Because that's the point. The written law follows the phenomena that there's a certain amount of divinity that has become visibly perceivable, and the aspect of divinity that has become visibly perceivable also becomes the visibly perceivable book, right? And the aspect of divinity of Torah that remains ideas, but not visible, incontrovertible fact, remains oral. And even after we wrote it down, cosmically, it's still the oral law, right? And that's also very interesting halacha in Hilchos Talmud Torah. Of course, it's good to understand what you're learning, but in my obligation to learn Tanakh, the written law, it's enough to just read it. Just see it, read it. Not okay, pronounce what you're reading to make it complete. You just read it. You don't have to understand it, and it's called you've read the book, because it parallels visible reality. See it. You saw it. Whether you understand it or not, that's something else. That's another level. That's what the Rambam writes, halacha l'maaseh, that the Kesuvim HaKodesh is Torah Shebechsav u'perushan, but their explanation, like Rashi on the Chumash, that's Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's the oral law. That's explanation, right? But there's a level of the amazing thing of Torah Shebechsav is that it is manifest divinity. It's revelation, right? And so the prophet was able to actually see what's written in the book, but just like he saw it, for us it becomes visible also. He was the conduit to make it visible for us, even though we're not on his level, but it became a book. And when we read that book, It's like we're having an experience of prophecy. By seeing those words that spell out what he saw, we have a similar experience. We're actually perceiving that divinity. That's the visible, revealed divinity. Right? But, and the visible world is much smaller than the conceptual world. I'll give a very crude example here. Take a look at this little cork. Speak of which, l'chaim. Right. How big is it? Right. Not much to see. You see it in one quick glance. But if I want to explain to you the energy that's in here, I'm going to explain it to you. The protons, the neutrons, the electrons, the molecules that make it up, and how it could all be converted into energy equals mc squared. It could make conversion into energy. It's going to blow up the whole neighborhood, right? There's a lot to explain about it. The explanation of the wisdom of God that's in something is much more to us, that is, than how it was manifest visibly. Get it? So also parallel to that, what's currently visible about the Torah is much smaller than all the explanations of that which is visible. And I imagine that this is very easy to understand. Look, it's that way even in the secular wisdoms. You take a look at a leaf, one little leaf, but then they in biology, as I explained to you, and the leaf and the green of it is the chlorophyll. You got to listen to lectures about chlorophyll, and tell you about photosynthesis, and I tell you how it makes the sugars, that it lives off, and just the visible leaf, a little leaf, and the explanations about what it is, what's in it. 10 courses in biology, right? All right, so that's also parallel to that. The written Torah is much smaller than, it represents what's visible about divinity, the aspect of Torah that's become visible versus, the explanation that's exponentially more, and that's in everything in life, to describe and explain the visible, especially if it's a true explanation and not a contrived one. It's so much more than how you observe it in a split second. But you observe it, you don't see the explanation. You just see the demonstration, and then the explanation is, and that's also why the Torah Shebechsav is a lot smaller than the Torah Shebaal Peh. There's the visible side versus the thought side, the explanation, all the wisdom that's in it. Right? So now when something is real to you, it's manifest. What it's like? It's like the body versus the soul. The body we see, the body we feel. I think everyone is real with the fact that he has a body. Soul, you believe you have a soul. Right now, and not in XLerate, but in other series, we'll discuss how you could feel your soul. And tap into your soul. We actually have a body and soul series, but right now, the body and soul relationship, that which is visible versus that which is spiritual, hence what's spiritual to us is conceptual. These are concepts, right? Because our whole connection to them is conceptual because we can't perceive them. Right, that's relationship of Torah Shebechsav to Torah Shebechsav. It's like Torah Shebechsav is the body that's physically manifest, incontrovertible fact, revealed, and the Torah Shebaal Peh is the soul, all the thought behind it, all the thought, infinite depth behind it, and indeed, I'm going to come back to this. And we're going to revisit this in next session. We're going to break up the components of Torah Shebaal Peh also, and we'll contrast them with Torah Shebechsav. The Leshem, right? The Rav Yosha's grandfather, the last of the great Lithuanian Kabbalists, says that if Torah created all of reality, it also means that Torah also created all of the laws of reality. So now there are the physical laws that we see. Like everyone sees gravity. What's the explanation of gravity? Aristotle explained it his way, and Newton explained it his way, and Einstein explained it that way. And it's very hard to prove one or the other. And the only way to prove that one is right or wrong is that there'll be a visible fact that can only be explained with this theory and not with that. Right? The question is, has there been enough visible facts to refute Newton. Right? As Einstein, but there's plenty of subsequently Galileo point out visible facts that Aristotle can't be explained with Aristotle's model. Right? So question, now with Newton is that, and that's why they still teach Newton in schools, because most of visible reality could be explained very well with Newton. Right? Okay, so so now the physical realm and the physical laws that are visible, says the Leshem, come from the Torah Shebechsav. That's the physical layer of reality. So the physical, the type of Torah that could become openly revealed, also from that Torah comes the aspect of reality that is totally observable. And miracles, and be it the revealed ones, hidden ones, they come from the Torah Shebaal Peh. Just like, the physical laws affect the body, and the spiritual laws come from the same realm as the soul. And when those spiritual laws, interface with physical reality, they make miracles, right? Some of the miracles remain hidden. Just we say, it was amazing timing, right? But, that's also like the soul is hidden within what the body does. And we're going to discuss that more in the next session. But the main point that for today's session is that the necessity for written Torah is revelation, right? And now we will go back to the questions that we posited, right? The written Torah starts from Moshe, even though there were prophets that came before him, because there's an amazing difference. The Rambam writes this in the Moreh Nevuchim. There's amazing shift with Moshe that there wasn't with all the prophets that came before him. We say they were prophets, right? Because Moshe tells us they were prophets in his book, right? Those other prophets, even though they had revelations, but those are not revelations that they can share. You will not find, the Ram points out in the Moreh Nevuchim, Noach was not sent to preach to the people of his generation. So he had a prophecy that the flood is coming, and he just built the teva. He built the ark. Excuse me. All right. He built his ark. And anyone wanted to ask him, so he didn't say in the name of God, but he argued with him philosophically, buddy, climate change is coming. Anyway, whatever he told them, he's a little bit criticized by Chazal, not taking enough, doing enough to save his generation. That's why the flood is called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach. All right. Yeah, that's it. He was not sent to preach. And even Avram wasn't sent to preach. He preached voluntarily, but God never sent him to preach. So prophecy before Moshe was the prophet's private revelation just for him, and he was not meant to share it. So even though he had revelation, he could not share that revelation, but share that revelation, not just the information of that revelation. He was never licensed in the name of God to go to the people in the name of God. That never happened until Moshe, right? But also parallel to that, right, is that just like he wasn't licensed to speak in the name of God, he also couldn't, what he saw, he just couldn't share in a manner that other people could see. That's the miracle of the Torah Shebechsav, that the prophet of the Navi, he is sharing what he, as it were, took in his mind's eye. He saw it, as it were. He could make visible to us also by putting it in the book, and has the same effect on our souls as if we see it. It's an amazing thing. And that miracle starts with Moshe. So as the Ram points out in Moreh Nevuchim, two things happen with Moshe that you won't find happen before him. He was sent to the people in the name of God. He goes to power in the name of God. He goes to Jewish people in the name of God. First time it ever happened in history. And also, parallel to that, no revealed miracles happen in the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. Avram doesn't do miracles. He's arguing with people philosophically. So just like he's not licensed from God to speak in God's name, right? It's his private business, his revel, but he argues with people philosophically, so it's all ideas. That's why it doesn't become a book, right? And he also doesn't do any revealed miracles that are visible facts that are incontrovertible. Some amazing stuff happened, but, nothing that can't be explained away. by a denier, like how he and Sarah had a kid at such an old age. And they say it wasn't from Avram, it was Avimelech got Sarah pregnant, as we know, is coming up in Parshas Toldos. Rashi alludes to that. The scoffers could find ways to scoff and deny. Moshe does miracles, revealed, that are incontrovertible. Was turning the staff into a snake, and the biggest one is that everyone saw with their own eyes God speak to him, right, by Sinai. Or, of course, and in between there was something pretty impressive, splitting the Red Sea. Right, so Moshe is where revelation of divinity starts from. And that's why, so the written Torah's revelation, right? So it starts with Moshe. He is the beginning of divine revelation. Until then, divinity and spiritual ideas, and even the idea that there's a God, these are all just ideas. With Moshe, it becomes revealed. And he opened up the door for other prophets to do it. And they're not on his level, but he opened up the door of that the divine becomes revealed, and as a function of it becoming revealed, it manifest. So because it's manifest as a book. Okay. Now you understand what Esther wanted so badly. Right? What Esther wanted so badly is, that she should be a book. She wanted that the miracle of Purim should not be something, it was a coincidence. It was just a coincidence. You have to have a king, happen to have a Jewish wife. Nah. By putting it into a book, she wanted the miracle of Purim to become manifest and make a real impression upon us. Make a real impression upon us, like all the books of prophecy. It's like it has a spiritual impression upon us as if we're seeing it, just like the prophet saw it. He is licensed to share that and told to share it, commanded to share it in a manner that he's literally not just sharing information, sharing the experience. And that's why it becomes a book. And when you read that book, you're looking at those words that describe what the prophet saw. It has an effect on you as if you're seeing it. And that explains how, mystically people, when they get into religion, it's easier for them to take on the Bible before they get into the Torah Shebaal Peh. Right, and we'll end off with this. I see this session is taking a lot longer than I calculated, so there's going to be an equally as long session to finish this discussion about the written law, the Torah Shebaal and its different components. But we'll just conclude with this point. Right, as we try to keep these sessions limited to 40 minutes. I see there'll be a whole nother 40 minutes to complete everything I wanted to say. All right, so there's going to be another follow-up to this. But just to complete, one of the big differences between Purim and Hanukkah, that Hanukkah never became a book. It's part of the Torah Shebaal Peh and all those books that tell the story. They're like Josephus, they're history books, and they don't have that metaphysical effect. We say, when it's in the book, it's real. It's like it's so tangible. It's like a bodily experience. So says Reb Tzadok HaKohen, that explains, why on Purim we have a mitzvah to eat. Because the body feels that miracle. When it becomes so manifest that it's a book, the body feels that miracle. Like anything you see is as real as physical reality. So the miracle of Purim is so real to us. So we have a Sudas mitzvah. The body should enjoy it because it's the spiritual effect is tangible. So the body, unfortunately, the miracle of Hanukkah is not as tangible. It's still a transcendental experience. That's why it's just to light candles at night. But it's still conceptual, right? Now, there's something about it that there's an aspect that's visible, but we're struggling. But the mitzvah's at night when it's dark, right? It's like struggling to illuminate the darkness. I mean, it's struggling to illuminate a world without revelation. So that's why in halacha there's no din of sudas mitzvah on Hanukkah. The body, it doesn't penetrate the bones like something that becomes manifest in one of the books of Tanakh. It's tangible. If it's tangible, even the body feels it. So Purim became, that's what she was fighting for. Admit that the miracle of Purim and the divine energies that were unleashed as a result of the miracle of Purim, they come all the way down to be manifest, just like it becomes a book. So it's something that, the body feels. And that's what we celebrate on Purim. We just get so soused, so toasted, so stoned, that the mind, right, ideas don't even work. It's to show that the aura of Purim, the light of Purim, became totally revealed, that even the body appreciates it. All right, we're going to end here. This is this was part 2A of the series of Structure of Torah in historical context. We will continue this discussion either later this week or next week. Finalize, get into the details of Torah versus Nevi'im versus Kesuvim and certain halachas regarding all that. Okay, let's go listen to what our president has to say. We should only hear Besuras Toivos.